So this is the time for Dharma questions and discussion. So lately I've been taking a little pause here and having people just contemplate for 30 seconds or so what is your own question, whether you ask it or not, about what the Buddha taught, how to apply it to your life, difficulties you're having, how the Dharma could help with those. So come to your own life and your own mind and think what your question would be. It's good to be holding questions. That's how we learn. Another way you could think about it is if this is the last chance you ever had in this life to ask a question about the Dharma, what would that be? And when anyone's ready, we can begin. Susan will pass around the microphone for those who are listening on streaming.
So you got me with the question. This is my last chance to ask.
Yeah, I got myself
Question
with
about
that one.
the Dharma.
Yeah, this is
My
it.
big question, and I don't know that it's answerable, is so much that I read in the Tibetan text seems so exaggerated, and I always wonder how much was it exaggerated for their culture to make a point, and is it really necessary in the West with all of our education? So like
Give an example. Exaggerated.
Well, like, okay, so 100,000 prostrations.
Oh, yeah. That one is not exaggerated.
That's real.
That's 111 and 111,111. 111,111. Now, what's exaggerated about that? First, let me just say, for people who don't know what we're talking about, there's a practice in Tibetan Buddhism called Ngondro. Ngondro is a, what's the translation of that, Sanjay? Preliminary, thank you. It went out of my head. So that's just a preliminary practice. And they're, yeah, warmed up. Warmed up for what? I'm sorry, but my asthma's acting up. Warmed up, warming up the mind, clearing the mind to be able to experience awakening. So experiencing awakening, that's a pretty high thing. So every Tibetan tradition has some Ngondro practices that are generally done during a long retreat. They're different in the different, like Gelug's have 6 and Kagyu's have 4. But like there are 111,000 prostrations, 111 certain mantras that purify, 111 guru yoga prayers, 111 offerings of mandala, offerings of the universe, and throwing it away and build it, throw it away, build it, throw away. Now, it's interesting. I really love that you labeled that exaggerated because it's exaggerated to think of realizing our Buddha nature in a certain way. I mean, I think what Lama Michael often says is when you're doing practice on the path, it's pretty much going to look not normal to the views of the world. Like, what's normal about going on a silent retreat? What's normal about going on 30-day, 90-day, 1 year, 3-year retreats? Pretty much, you tell your family you're going to do that, and the first thing you're going to hear is, that is not normal. I'm frightened for you. This is abnormal. I mean, I heard all these, abnormal, dangerous, danger. So we have to know what the purpose is. My own experience of doing the 100,000 prostrations, which I just keep doing now because I really love it. I just do 30 or 40 every day. I'm way past the requirement. But I haven't finished my mandala, Ngondro. That's harder for me for some reason, partly arthritis in my hand, but it's some kind of thing in my way. But I do some of that every day too, maybe 2 or 3. What my experience was, I want to try and get this precise and true. Okay. The lives we live could be called exaggerated delusion. Our everyday life is an exaggerated delusion. We need to see that. And it's not easy to see. It's so interesting. It's so enticing. It's so full of so many things we can do. And then our death comes. And we're like, that's it? What did I spend most of my time doing? I mean, really, look back, What did I spend most? I spent so many years studying law. I don't use it at all now, Wasn't a bad thing to do. It was a good career choice, but that would be considered really good to do. Whereas going on a 90-day retreat, weird, exaggerated, doing 100,000 prostrations, strange. So it's hard for us to see the delusion we're in without what? There's these ditches we fall in. We're not saying that our life is bad. We're not saying the activities are bad. We're simply saying we will continue to cycle around and around, birth, aging, sickness, death, new body, birth, aging, sickness, death, suffering again, being this gender, this race, that race, even transmigrating into animal bodies because of what we've developed in our mind. And this will not end unless we really see the suffering and we pierce through the delusion of separate self. Now, it takes some real work, at least for me. Some people say not, as our Lama often says. No, you'll see it in flashes, and then you just keep repeating that, and that can happen. But the way I had to go at it was a lot of meditations on taking the person apart. What makes a person? I think there's a solid, separate person here. And I'll do a lot to defend that person and make her happy over your happiness. I'll be nice about it, but still, I do think I'm the most important person in my universe. I'm the one that's going home with me tonight, and you're not. And at that moment, you kind of disappear, right? I just can't hold you in my mind. Even a partner, you still are in your own shell, right? So we're stuck in a delusion of how solid this is, and how important it is, and how separate it is. How separate it is. And it takes a lot of momentum to break out of that. So Ngondro is momentum. When you do 100,000 prostrations, you go through every single mental, emotional possibility, and you see they come, they go, you just keep going through boredom and some discomfort and joy and bliss and more boredom and more pain and anger, and then that's gone, and it doesn't matter. You're just doing it. And something happens. So many things happen. But it's about training the mind to be strong, to be willing to do that. Not everybody has to do that to become awakened, but it's one of the main practices. It's kind of like if you want to win in the Olympics, you can't just kind of, I'll run a little bit today, and I hope I win the gold medal. Something about kind of upping the joyous effort and upping the trust in the path the teachers took. That's what got me into it. I was so not interested in Ngondro. I was like, I went through Catholic stuff. I'm not doing this kind of thing again. But following my teacher and feeling like this is a human that's got something different going on, the best ethics I ever saw, a kind of magnetism. She's got hundreds of students. Being able, like Lama Michael in this community, to manifest a beautiful building, authentic teachers, authentic teaching. This doesn't just happen. These folks are resting on 1 year retreat, 3-year retreat, and then these folks. And these folks say to us, when we say, how'd you get like that? They say, do 111,000 prostrations. 111,000 prostrations. You go, really? They say, yeah, go on a long retreat and do that. So you go on a long retreat and you do it, and you go, okay, something changed, and whatever it was, I know I'm not falling back into something. Something's done. Then you do the next one. some things done. Am I getting there?
I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But there's a different exaggeration I do want to refer to, and then Sanjay. Sometimes, like, let's say in the text, one text I'm helping to lead a book group in Words of My Perfect Teacher, a lot of times the teachings the language can seem very kind of over the top, like if you harm people, you go to a hell realm, and there's leaves there made of slicing, and they'll slice you, and you'll burn, and I talked to Geshe-la about it, and I said, I don't think Westerners ought to read this. I think it's going to scare everybody away. And he said, don't. He said, skip that part. He said, and he's not the only one, these teachings were brought up from India into Tibet, and the Tibetan people were a very kind of rustic, hardy, wild people, and they had their own bone religion, their own spiritual path, and in bringing those, they were talking to folks that were needing that kind of style. But the practice is not so. There, in fact, Lama Yeshe says, the best thing for Westerners is prostration, because Westerners are so distracted and so busy and so focused on their bodies that the thing with prostration is the body speech, because you're doing recitations while you prostrate. The body, speech, and mind are all occupied. You have a visualization, you're prostrating too. It has all kind of beings in it that you can learn about. You have a thing you're saying, and you're going full out on the floor, back, up, down. So you get completely engaged. It's like, and then it wears out some of that nervous energy. That's one of the things I really saw wear out. It's just like, wow. Just like when you do anything to the point where you get really tired, it's like, I'm not nervous anymore. That relaxed, like, I did it. Yeah, so it's a preparatory practice for Vajrayana, specifically for deity practices.
I felt, along with the practice of prostrations in Ngondro, that the concept and experience, is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The concept and experience of surrender was very important to me, because I think we kind of build ourselves up as we struggle through the society, and we have to be strong and confident to make our way through life, right?
And individualistic.
Individual.
Yes.
And so we have a whole lot of preferences and aversions build up. And that surrendering process that happens in prostrations sort of tears that down and levels you out and opens you up for what's to come next. And I found it to be quite a remarkable experience, just going through that. Because it takes a while. You don't just bat the 111,000 out. No. You have to kind of keep on top of it. And
yeah. It's good to do when you're younger, too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I didn't get there till like 47 or 48, and I was still able to go through fairly quickly. But the 20-somethings who were with us, they were just pounding it out, and I was like, a little envious. But those words are so important, the surrender. In fact, I want to talk about that word for a minute, because it's why these are all for preparation for Vajrayana, which is, called a quicker path to enlightenment. You don't have to do Vajrayana, and you can still become fully enlightened. A whole lot of people have been enlightened with no Vajrayana. That's very important to know. But for some who are drawn to that, it's called a quicker path, because what you do is you, in essence, it's called the resultant path. You take the result of thinking of yourself already as a completely pure, whole being, a deity, and you carry that around, imagining the world is already a completely pure mandala, and nothing else is going on, just appearances. But everybody can be dakas, dakinis, other deities, and you can go forward that way. So that's taking the result. But someone said to me, oh, there's a really good explanation, like in high-level sports, they'll say, imagine you won, imagine you touch the end of the pool first, imagine that shot that you make that's so perfect, that's taking the result and then working as though the result is real, and it seems to really spur people. So that kind of practice, as you can imagine, can get you in a lot of trouble. Like one of the first ones is a kind of false pride, which we already have, right? We're already kind of falsely proud of either being the greatest or the crappiest person in the world, So the Ngondro, the preparatory practices, are all about flattening that out and surrendering. It's about reducing the self-centered mind so it will split open and be ready for those kind of higher level energies. So it's very specific, the Ngondros, to Vajrayana. Yeah. You do 100,000 mandalas, which I haven't done 100,000. I'm somewhere in, around 10,000, 11,000. You do those, and you're building up the world in your mind, and then you're giving it away and throwing it away, and you build it again, and you give it away, and you throw it away, and you build it again, and you start getting this sense of, this is how things are. My whole life is mandalas. I get up and make my breakfast. It's a mandala. I eat it. It's gone. Now I go do an interview with someone. We have it. It's gone. These are all little mandalas you're building, and you spend all this energy and putting things in the right place and making it happen, and poof, it's gone. It's fine. That's how things are. So you get a deep sense of impermanence. At the same time, you get a deepen your sense of giving. You're not holding on to any of it. Long prayer here, it belongs to everyone else, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And these all are very targeted, They're really figured out to work on certain parts of our stubborn, individualistic, confused mind. Yeah. They almost feel magic if you, quote, just do it. Like, we would get down the road a little. I did a lot of this with a small group of about 7 people at Sravasti Abbey in 90 days. And we would get there and just be complaining, our bodies ache, and our teacher would just say, just do the practice. Just do the practice. All this other stuff, you're just wasting time complaining and wondering if you're going to stay or go, or just keep doing the practice, And it was true, So, yeah, thanks. Good question. But don't let it scare you away. You don't have to do that. And but I do want to say, especially for people who are new to this, the Mahamudra program includes a way to do that in your lay life and without long retreats. So when Bill's going to be teaching more on Mahamudra this year, I hope he'll do some beginning things, but I think it may be more support for people already doing it. I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah, we don't know. But the Mahamudra program has that, and it's many steps, to finally going to India, getting empowerments, and etc. But you can take efforts towards it. If you're really interested, one way is start the Wednesday evening Chenrezig practice. Just be there, learn it, listen, it soaks in. You see if you have affinity toward it. Some people have a lot of affinity towards deity practice, and others are like, I just don't get it. And that's fine. You don't have to. But it's kind of fun imagining that the world's already full of wonderful dakinis and dakhas and chenrezis and taras, and it can brighten your mind and change how you react. I have a habit now I'm trying to cultivate, just as an example. If someone's talking to me and I'm really not liking what they're saying, which just happened yesterday, and I did my thing of I feel my resistance, like, oh God, I want to argue, I don't want to be here, and I'm feeling all that, I'm watching it, and then I just say to myself, this is Tara talking to you. Tara's a female deity, quite beautiful. And then all of a sudden it's like easy, like, what's she saying? Oh, okay, interesting. I could let that in, no big deal. I mean, it's just this is the way it can work, if you work it. But it's really good in Vajrayana to get guidance. And you can't dive into it from a book or from this talk. You have to do the steps so we don't get lost in fantasy land.
So, my question, and this might be above your pay grade, but
thanks.
Is what is it that, in your view, what is it that survives death?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you said that. This is my last chance.
I know, I asked, as soon as I said that, I was like, what are you saying, Zopa? Like, if this is your last question, because what popped up in my mind, what happens at death? That would be the question I would want to ask, and I thought, I hope nobody asks me that. But the answer is, I don't know, but according to the teachings, we've all died, huge amounts of time. And that kind of tells us something about the thickness of our ignorance, that we don't even remember it, So the basic teachings go something like this. Mind and body are connected when we're alive. Consciousness, you could say, instead of mind. Not brain. Brain's part of body, okay? But the consciousness, the ephemeral thing, like love, love's not a chemical, love's not an electrical impulse, anger, these things, you can measure them in the body, you can measure chemically, but they aren't produced by it, okay? They're produced through the consciousness. So when the body collapses in, and it does it in stages, like earth, water, fire, wind, space. Earth, water, fire, wind, space. And the mental consciousness, 6, okay? So when those start collapsing, we feel heavy, the earth elements. And, as I age, I feel these. You can feel them. Okay, a little heavier, harder to move, osteoporosis sets in. That's an earth element going. Bone is no longer constructing, it's deconstructing. Hair falls out. Hair is considered part of the earth. Anything hard, fingernails, hair, etc. Then the water element starts going. You start drying up. Anybody here that's aging, notice you dry up. Yeah, you dry up. So you hit a certain age and skin is drier, everything's drier. That's natural. So earth element's going, water element's going, fire element starts going. Old people are more cold. I'm much more cold than I used to be. So, the blood's just not running as fast, So we got earth, water, fire. Then the wind is the breath, It gets harder to breathe. It's just, you've been around old people, you've noticed this, right? I'm not telling you anything new, I'm just telling you the way the Buddhist kind of view on it is. And then the space element is all the spaces in the body. So those dissipate too. There's kind of a collapsing, okay? So while those happen, the mind starts doing something also. That's what the body's doing, okay? Then the mind starts, this is like at the time of death, the mind starts having certain visions, and they're pretty consistently reported by all the yogis, that is, beings who can do these things, then report back for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the mind starts seeing, like as the earth element collapses into water, the mind sees mirage. When the water element collapses into fire, then there's smoky haze. Then when the fire element collapses into wind, there's sparks in, and this is what's going on mentally for the person that's in the dying process. And then, so we got the sparks. Then there's a sense of the sparks disappear, and a sense of kind of a flickering candle light. This is what the Dalai Lama has written this out in his book on Advice for Living and Dying Well, translated by Jeffrey Hopkins. Then the sparks disappear, then there's a sense of a flickering candle light, not a candle, but just the light, almost going out, then steady. And then the next is what they call 4 states of mind, and they go through different colors, white, red, dark. And then emerging into the clear light, which is the aware our basic clear awareness that we're actually trying to kind of touch on in our calm abiding and our insight meditation. So we're trying to touch on that while we're alive, so that we'll recognize it when we die, okay? So that's the consciousness. The body's not going to go, obviously. It seems obvious to say, but I'm telling you, people talk about it like as though it does go. Like my sister says, when my brother died, I wonder if he'll see mom first. Well, he won't. He might see a consciousness of mom, but how could he see her body? It's totally deteriorated way long ago, But you watch your own language around this and see what you got taught, and listen to how people talk about this as though a person's going to go forward. He went to Jesus. She's in heaven.
Kind of my main question is there's, I think everybody has this wish that your personality is going to survive.
Say bye to that.
Yeah. So that's pretty
yeah. You won't be anything of this person except the karmic habits that are carried forward. 3 kinds of karmic habits: positive, moving away from suffering; negative, habits towards suffering; and neutral, habits that don't go either of those 2 ways. But don't worry, you won't be there. That's Woody Allen's joke. It's, don't worry about death, you won't be there. You won't be there.
I'm not afraid of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Yeah, that was his joke. I just don't want to be there when it happens. So I would say, don't worry, you won't be. But do worry in this sense. We are putting imprints into our mind stream constantly. So if I watch a bunch of violent movies, I'm putting that in my mind stream. It'll go forward. I already notice. I go to anything like that, it shows up in a dream. So it's in there already, If we're putting in a lot of pornography, that's going to be in there. If we're putting in a lot of craving, we're creating the mental habits. Those go forward. But they're not tied to Pat anymore or Zopa anymore. We're gone. We're bupkis. but we are responsible for that mind stream. Someone, one way to think about it is someone did so much good work on this mind stream before, countless being, that I get to be here doing this. Just always amazes me. I don't know what I'm doing up here, honest to God, I really don't. But it's very enjoyable, and I think it's helpful to people, I hope, and being able to study Dharma and retire into the Dharma. I had no idea. I didn't even know the word Buddha till I was 30 or something. So, but these causes and conditions come together, and then you're just propelled, and they can be that kind of a beneficial propelling, but we also get propelled into negative habits. I have some. I'm sure everybody has some kind of negative habit you're working on. Well, keep working on it, because that's what's going forward. And it will manifest in a new form called something else. But and then when we get fully awakened, we actually see back. Oh, I remember the time I was Pat Kirkup. Do you remember that? The Buddha saw all of his lives. He saw all of them. That's right in the sutras. That's one of the qualities of the awakened mind. It's no big deal to see all that. Once you clear up the ignorance, the craving, the aversion, no problem. Because you have no aversion to death either. It's just another transition. Tonight you'll walk out of this room. Big transition. We need to notice these transitions. Now I'm here. Now I'm walking out of this room. Now I'm in my car. Now I'm in my apartment. Now I'm raiding my refrigerator. We need to notice, wow, different. Who am I doing this? Who was that back there? This is the impermanence piece and getting used to it. So what goes forward is, they say, it's called the mind stream. That's one of the translations. It's not a soul, and it's not a person. It's really important to know that. Soul is too solid, and person is too solid. It's something much more ephemeral. And I had 2 teachers give metaphors. They say, well, it's an experience, so we can only say a metaphor. One said, it's as ephemeral as a decaying leaf floating down a stream and decaying on its way. So, impermanent, but still there and in a stream. The other one made more sense to me. This was Guy Newland, who's a marvelous Buddhist teacher, and he said, it's what goes forth is having been there. That's kind of a koan. What goes forth is the having been there. So he said, did it make a difference in the world that Martin Luther King had been here? Yeah, but he's long gone. Could you even trace where all those effects went? No, we can't even do that with this person's self. So the having been there and what we did is what goes forward. It's the karmic tendencies is another way to say it. That's why it's so important to have ethics, to have the four immeasurables of kindness and love and joy and compassion, and to, but to understand they're not solid. It's not, we're not putting them away. I'm not putting them away for Zopa in a little cupboard that she'll get them out after she dies. She'll go get them and say, ooh, I don't want that. Yeah. It's a bit mysterious, this whole thing we're in. It's good to notice that. It's a bit mysterious. And surrender to that. I like that word. It's a potent word. The reason I like the word surrender so much was it took me a long time to see that I needed someone else in front of me to follow, the teacher. Because I thought, I don't need that. I know everything. God, I'm a woman. I broke through the barrier at law school, and I did this, and I did that, and I'm so smart, and and besides, I'm better than all of you. and then at moments thinking I'm worse than anyone. But when you have someone in front of you who is a really good model in the world of an ethical person, a kind person, then you can say, what do you do to get like that? And you can watch them and you can follow. And it's a great relief, for one thing. It's really a relief, you know? It's like you're in a line and there's someone behind you learning from you, and you're learning from that one, and they're learning all the way back to Shakyamuni Buddha or the Dalai Lama. Okay, I'll trust that. But it's hard because you have to get that individualism. You have to see it and then say, does it help me or not? My strong, strong individualism. It's not a bad thing, but where does it lead me to? It leads me to where that I knows how to go. But that I, what I saw, went to suffering over and over. Trying to end suffering still went to suffering. So it was like, not a good enough leader. I need a better leader. So you can just, if you don't have a close teacher, you can just use the Buddha and read the Buddha's life. You know, there's a beautiful book called Old Path, White Cloud. Do you know that one? Yeah, it's stories of the Buddha. It's probably in there. It's kind of a fat book. It's by Thich Nhat Hanh. And oh my God, I love those stories of the Buddha. It's based on the sutras, which were the first things written down about the Buddha. So some people argue that they're more authentic. They're just such great examples of how he meets with a guy that killed 999 people and then wanted to kill him, and what he says to the guy to turn him around, and the guy becomes one of his best disciples. So there's just story after story of like that, and you get very inspired, like, I want to be like that. I'd love to turn the mind of a mass murderer. Wouldn't that be cool? I don't have that power now, but you can get that far because they see your love and compassion, and it breaks something in them. It breaks that habit. Yeah. Have time for just one more last question of your whole life. I hope not. And it doesn't have to be heavy, it could be light. Or we could end too. Okay, let's dedicate. Good, thank you. Thank you, good questions. By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra. establish all beings without exception in this state. Thank you. Have a good week of practice on and off the cushion. And we'll see you Wednesday or Thursday or Saturday or Sunday.